Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited for tonight. I could say this guy is a former hardcore champion. I could say this guy is the toughest man in the dress. I could say a lot of things, but I'd rather say this. Tonight we have my good personal friend, Big Vito Grasso, joining us. Vito, thank you so much for taking the time out.
No worries, no worries. How's everybody out there? Moraldo land, how's everything? I hope everybody's having a great day. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Sunday. I see the great posters on the wall. Mike, we have been friends for over 20, we're going on almost 30 years. That's a long time. And I
Long time.
respect you so much. I mean, I'm glad you're my uncle and you broke me into business. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's, ladies and gentlemen, we should end it right there. Perfect.
That's it.
Perfect. Vito, were you always a fan growing up? Like, what got you into wrestling?
Well, it's like anything else. I used to watch WOR, on Friday nights, Channel 9. And I grew up watching that. Then when I was coming up the ranks in the real world, I was going to be a pro basketball player. I was Division I scholarships. I had them. I couldn't take it. I went to community college. I wound up trying out for the Olympic baseball team. I came back to Staten Island. I was going to play semi-pro football. And then I was looking at wrestling. I said I could do just as good as these guys on TV. I went to Johnny Rodz' school, and the rest is history.
Who was there when you went to Johnny Rodz that we would know?
The class was Taz, Damian Demento, Bill DeMott, Devon, myself. There were a bunch of other guys. Alex was there, but he had left before me. He was before me.
Who's Alex?
Alex from the Dudleys, Big Alex from the Dudleys, who was in there, and then Dancing with Dudleys was in there before me, and there were quite a few guys before me in Johnny Rodz. But Johnny Rod's very first student is SD Jones, and I know you remember SD from back in the day. So it was a very distinguished class, a class that came out with all champions. You know what I mean? From Dreamer to Taz to Damien Demento to Bill DeMott to Devon, myself. What a great class of guys that come through the wrestling ranks.
Wow. What was a typical day at class like at Johnny Rodz?
Repetitive training, the basics. If you can't get up, you can't wrestle. If you can't do this, you can't wrestle, right? So, and those guys were schooled, and everybody knows Johnny Rodz back then. He was probably one of the more notable tough guys in the wrestling business, and he was a shooter, and he knew how to wrestle and keep you grounded. And if you couldn't get up, you didn't wrestle. And there was another guy there by the name of Larry DeGarris. He didn't become real famous, but he was a college wrestler. You talk about me learning my craft at the Johnny Rodz School and learning how to amateur wrestle. If I didn't go through that, I would never have been successful in Japan, where I tagged with Tenryu and wrestled Mizawa and wrestled Fujinami and some other great wrestlers. I mean, I've wrestled the greatest of the great. I mean, I can't complain with the training I had.
Wow. How did you start working for the WWE first, doing the enhancement work? Did Johnny get that for you?
No, he did not. It was a gentleman by the name of Sonny Blaze. He used to do TVs.
Sonny
And
Broadway?
that's it. So he said, "Hey, Vito, you want to come to TV?" So I said, okay. Johnny was furious because I left the nest and it was in my first year of wrestling. And Johnny, you're not ready. But I says, hey, I'm ready. You know what I mean? I wanted to go. So there I am. I go up to TV, and there I am. It's me and this guy, Al Coleman, and we are facing the Rockers, and I'm looking up, and there's the WWF, insignia, and I'm standing there, and before I knew it, the finish came, and there I was, my debut in WWF.
Wow. What other notable guys did you do enhancement work for, and any good stories from any of those matches?
I could tell you I wrestled Bret Hart his first Intercontinental Championship title match. I wrestled him 4 times. I wrestled the British Bulldog. I wrestled the Big Boss Man, Owen Hart and Coco B. Where I tagged with Iron Mike Sharp on Monday Night Raw. Virgil I wrestled. Tatanka I wrestled 4 times. Typhoon on Monday Night Raw from the Manhattan Center. I've had a lot of great people teach me from those days. And if it wasn't for the teaching back then, like Mike, you don't advance. And I was a student of the game. I wasn't one of the guys who used to hang out in groups, as you know. I was like always a solo, and I went. And the biggest thing was if you could talk the talk, you got to be able to walk the walk. And no matter how much trash talking I did, I could always back up my wrestling. And I knew I had that in my back pocket.
Well, I mean, as most people know, when you start doing enhancement work, if you do it for too long, you're getting labeled as an enhancement talent. You didn't do that. You stuck around for a little bit, then you got out. What was your game plan once you stopped doing TV matches?
Well, the thing was is that everybody's game plan. When wrestling was wrestling back then, your thing was to go to the WWF. Go to Japan, get your Ribera jacket, go wrestle for Carlos in Puerto Rico. But in my first 2 years, I wrestled for WCW TV. Remember, my first TV match was against beautiful Bobby Eaton. If everybody remembers me, I got caught with the Alabama Jam.
I
Right
didn't know
then, I
that.
was under WWF. I went to the next year. I went to Japan, and then I went to wrestle for AWF in Puerto Rico. So in the first 2 years, I did like all the monumental things that people wanted to accomplish in their career. A lot of guys never went to Japan, let alone Puerto Rico. And here, that's when my career took off. And it was one of the guys who were veterans who told me, Vito, if you stay in the business, like you said, Mike, you're going to get labeled as Barry Horowitz. And I did not want that.
How did you end up in ECW?
Well, I wrestled in Santo Domingo for Jack Veneno. I wrestled for Jerry Lawler in the USWA. I went back to Carlos for 3 years, and I lived in Puerto Rico for 3 years. I went to All Japan Pro Wrestling. I wrestled, the Great Mizawa. I'm probably one of the very few, and you can count it on your hands how many people actually pinned him. I'm one of the guys who actually pinned Mizawa. So when I came home and then wrestling in Puerto Rico had gone its course, I had to make a choice. So I took my bag and I went down to ECW at the Queen's House Lodge. I saw Taz. I said, "Listen, I'd like to come for a job," and they told me come back next week, and I had to earn my keep. So it was a bit of eating some humble pie because a lot of guys I already did things that guys wish they could do in the wrestling business, but I still didn't have a full-time job. So I went to ECW. I earned my keep step by step with a lot of our friends, like Mike Bucci, who was down there, and a couple other guys who we know. And it was a great learning process. And then I had great matches down there. I had a good work ethic. They loved me down there. That's when I got the call to go to WCW.
I remember a good match you had with RVD in
Yes.
ECW. Any other memorable things that stand out for ECW before we go to WCW?
Well, I got to wrestle RVD, and me and him had a great chemistry. I wrestled Sabu. I wrestled all the singles guys, right? So I went around the whole spectrum. I wrestled Taz his first championship match he had after he won the belt, and it was where Paul Lee didn't really have a single spot for me, and that's where we came up with the Baldies. And the Baldies were a good group. And I said, guys, if and it was a group that had inexperienced guys, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. It was guys who'd never been anywhere else except the Northeast, like we were. And I said, guys, if we listen to me and we do this, I said, I think we're going to take off. And the Baldies took off, and we had the walk. We had the same outfits. We did the same thing, and it was a great thing. We had that feud with New Jack Balls and Axel. We won on the pay-per-view. Everybody looked good. If that foursome of a group would have had a little bit more length, and the reason we disbanded is because I left. They didn't bring back PN News, and it was just Angel and Tony DeVito, and it really wasn't the group anymore. It was just two guys. You know what I mean? So I think that group had potential to be probably a great foursome in the wrestling business. And then, going to WCW, they tagged me with Johnny the Bull, and they trusted me to teach him and guide him. And I became World Tag Team Champions in WCW when we beat our friend Crowbar and David Flair.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, did they explain to you your role there is going to be to take someone like Johnny the Bull and get him up to speed?
Pretty much, because like at that time, Vince Russo was in charge, and he's the one who suggested I come in. JJ Dillon signed me to my first pro contract. And then it was Kevin Sullivan who was the one who put the straps on us. He said, Vito, I'm gonna, you earned it. Here's your chance. And there I am walking out. I'm, tag team champion of the world. And like it was like a blink of an eye. And there I am. You run the network, you run the TV. It wasn't 3 months until I realized, holy crap, I'm in WCW. I'm tag team champion of the world. And at that time, you had DX going in WWE. So it was DX against the Mamalukes, and the fame and the rivalry at that time with the Monday Night Wars, and then, just having a great experience. And then they switched me to the hardcore division. And, that was something I was very proud of. They worked an angle where Johnny and I got the belt. They beat John, but I had to beat Funk. If I didn't beat Funk, it didn't mean anything because nobody beat him one-on-one legit. So it's Monday Night Nitro. I beat Funk fair and square. I pinned him, handed me the belt in the middle of the ring in front of 2 million plus people, shook my hand. It was like a passing of the torch. When we get to the bar that night, everybody from Flair to Hogan to Luger to everybody was in the bar. Me and Gene called me over. Said, Vito, come over here. He says, I want to congratulate you. Everybody raise your glass. Vito, tonight you arrived. Congratulations. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is pretty cool. You had a high-profile match with Kevin Nash, too, I remember, on Nitro.
Wrestling Kevin Nash, we were in a program with Chuck Palumbo and, the New Blood. That was a great experience for me. I am the main event. And, I wasn't put in that position because I was somebody's friend. I earned it. And guys trusted me, and was having great matches. And there I am wrestling the Big Sexy. And how many people could say they suplexed the 7-footer and you dropped your arsenal on him, and then you kick out of his finish, and that shocked everybody. Like, no way. No, he just didn't. No way. Yeah, and that was my character build, and I was just I was in my prime, and everything was going great, and just the wrestling was flowing, and it was probably one of the best times in my career.
Did they tell you any promises? Did they offer you anything that didn't happen? Did they give you any direction, or did they just say, you're wrestling so and so tonight, go produce?
They had, what it was? It was funny because there was so many chiefs in the kitchen that it was hard to follow. And they're pushing me, then they're taking me back. They put the tag team together, they're pushing me back. They start me in a singles run again, they're pushing me back. And I was on the cusp of being a major superstar in the business because I built my reputation up. And then when I lost the belt that night, that Wednesday at the TV taping, because we taped for Saturdays, the ovation I got when I wrestled the Artist was echoing, and everybody was like, oh my God. Nobody could believe it. The announcers, the boys in the back, they were just shocked because the whole place was echoing my name. And my name wasn't Hogan or Goldberg. I mean, it was, Vito. So it was a pretty awesome time.
Were you in WCW till the very end?
Yes, I was. And it was a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. There's too many people with their hand in the pot. Who wants to do this? Who wants to do that? Ultimately, it was sold, and there was a whole other story that is just. It should have just stayed the way it was. WCW on TBS, the Superstation. Some of us would still be wrestling on that place. You know what I mean? So it's sad that it disappeared.
Were you there at the last Nitro?
I was not there at the last Nitro, but I watched on TV, and it was just sad to see because I love that place and just everything about it. And you put your heart and soul into it, and you're like, okay, I mean, this run is over. Now where do you go? And I didn't get picked up by the WWE, so I wound up going to the XWF with Hogan and Roddy Piper and Lawler and all those guys. And I was selected as the first 15 guys to take that company afloat. In the first 3 shows, we had 8,000, 15,000, and 5,000 just on infomercials. And here I am, opening match with Buck Bagwell, and we're like, all right, this is going to take off. And Mr. Perfect was there, the Legion. Roddy Piper was there. Greg Valentine was there. The Nasty Boys were there. it was a good chemistry. And then, Jerry Lawler was on commentary. And then once Vince saw how powerful that lineup was with Hogan, it just, he started signing guys to look ridiculous contracts. And then that was the end of that.
So tell me about WWF, WWE.
I got to go in there. Well, first I made a pit stop in Impact, if you remember. And I was with the NYC. And then I was with Glenn Gilberti and Johnny Swinger and Stephanie. And then we had a good little foursome. And then they got rid of Johnny Swinger. They got rid of Disco. And it was like, okay, what happened to this? And then again, it was like WCW. Russo left. They've changed direction. They did this. They did that. And it was like, I can't believe I can't go through this again. So then I had put a call up to WWE. And I said, listen, I'm done with TNA. And they said, all right, come on up. So as soon as I got up there, Arn Anderson comes up to me and says, where the hell have you been? So we all been waiting. I says, well, I'm just, I'm here now. And like, let's do it. I wrestled my heart out for like about 4 or 5 different months. And then they finally offered me a deal and they put us with our good friend Nunzio and the full-blooded Italians. And we had Nunzio won the Cruiserweight title. And a great experience, a great run. I mean, I can't complain about that. You come in as a champion, that's a good spot.
Now, let me ask you this. Around that time that they put you in the dress is when Vito from The Sopranos came,
Right.
they started being a gay character on that TV show. Was that in correlation with your character change? How did they present it to you? Who presented it to you?
It was Vince and Stephanie who presented it to me. They said, how would you feel about wrestling in a dress? Could you do this? I says, yeah. Because they had started ECW again. They wanted to take Nunzio and put him in ECW. So they were looking for something for me to do. So a lot of people took it as a goof. Some people took it as a rib. But being I was a consummate worker, I'd been 15 years in the business. I said, okay, I'm going to take this and make it work. And I made it work. I got it over. I went on an undefeated streak. And not too many guys could take something and make it great. A lot of people, and I'm not saying I'm comparing myself to Dusty Rhodes. I'm just talking about knowing the business and knowing what you're capable of and how to do things, right? Dusty Rhodes is probably one of the greatest champions of our generation, right? And they tried to mock him by calling him Virgil because Virgil was his name. That's when they made Virgil Mr. Perfect's bodyguard. And then when they gave him the common man with the polka dots and they gave him Sapphire to be his manager, it was a knock against him. He made it work. Here I am wearing a dress and what do I know about wearing a dress and what do I know about doing this? Everything was done on the fly. And I learned as I went. And I said, okay, let me try this. Let me try this. Let me try this. And it got over. The people loved it. And once I started smiling, I became the biggest baby face. And I was probably the most recognizable pro athlete for that year.
Talk about the lifestyle you lived for that year that you told me about, when we used to hang out. Like, tell me about, like, people don't understand you lived this gimmick.
I lived it. I traveled in it. I worked in it. I traveled the world in a dress. I went everywhere. Women adored it. Women loved it. I got to meet so many fascinating people. So many people who wish they could have been me to actually wear the dress and be that person. And as a straight guy, and people coming out and they say, "Man, I wish I could do what you're doing," and meeting people on planes. People actually upgrading me to first class. I'm sitting there freezing on a plane. They're giving me a blanket because I'm in the dress. They're giving me a blanket so I can cover my legs. People were like, they were beautiful to me. And, it was funny because it was probably my best year of dating, being in a dress. It really, guys, it's a serious. I used to come home and say, I could go out and let me go to the club. I'd put on my regular clothes. I go out and say, yeah, I'm going to score tonight to get some honeys, right? Not a drip. Put the dress on. It was like a magnet. I was like, man, I should have did this 10 years ago. I'm telling you, it would have been great.
Oh, it's funny. Why did they take you out of the dress?
Michael Hayes had a racial problem. Michael Hayes was a racist. Michael Hayes had a bunch of homophobia things. He was a Southerner. It's noted and documented in WWE. He said, I can't have a guy like you on my show. We need to get you out of that dress. And at that time, he was They were trying to make Mr. Kennedy. That was his boy, his drinking buddy. So I got taken out of the dress because of it. Nobody could understand it. I was there
There's
for
always
another year. I had another year, and then I had worked on a Muay Thai gimmick, and I went down to. Everybody thinks I just sat home. I went down to developmental every single week. I went to Deep South, and I went to Ohio Valley. I became the Deep South heavyweight champion. I went down to Ohio Valley. I worked on another gimmick, full fledged. Our friend Mike Bucci was in charge of talent relations at the time, along with Steve Kern. And comes down to TV, says, Vito, you're ready. He says, you've never been more ready. You look great. He says, we're calling you up to TV. Then I get this call from John Laurinaitis. And he says, we have nothing for you. That's it. But there's another story behind that because, and with all the allegations going on with the WWE right now and John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon, believe me, guys, I was a part of it. I got treated a certain way and I was fired not because of my wrestling, but for other things. And it was personal. And I'll get to tell my story soon.
Is there anything you want to talk about though about current state of wrestling as far as the Vince McMahon allegations? Anything that maybe you saw or anything you were part of? If you don't, we don't have to go there. But is there anything you want to discuss?
Guys, when you take a stand in life and you're a man and you speak your mind, you're never a sheep. And in the wrestling business, like, you know, Mike, they just like yes men. I was never a yes man. They always told me, Vito, if you just kiss a little ass, you could be world champion. And I was that good of a wrestler. I was a great wrestler. I don't take a backseat to nobody. You know what I mean? And I'm not just saying that to boast. I mean, Mike Moraldo here knows my capabilities in ring. He remembers Skull Von Crush. He remembers Vito from back in the day, you know. And I always took my pride in my wrestling. And then when you're exposed to the wrestling business behind the scenes in the big time, you see a lot of things and you witness things and you see things and you're like, okay, do you speak about it or do you keep your mouth shut? The culture is what happens with the boys stays with the boys. I saw a lot of things with John Laurinaitis. I saw things with Vince McMahon. I saw a lot of things with the writers, how they treated people, how they acknowledged people, how they interacted with people, how I was interacted with during the dress. Um, all I could say, guys, and I speak for this for, this is real life. Guys, if it was your daughter and somebody did the stuff that they talk about to your daughter, what would you do? Mike, you have a beautiful family. You have two beautiful daughters, and somebody was to harass or do something to your daughters. You're not a physical guy. You're not a violent guy, but you're going to stand up, you know, and you think about it. It's the same thing when you're a victim of something and you've been harassed and humiliated and you're treated a certain way, guys. You just take it as it comes. You don't say much. You don't give everything out. You just wait and you sit for the right moment when you're asked to present something. It's the best way I can explain it.
Okay. All right. So your WWF run is done. You were in WCW, you were in WWE, you were on the top of the world. What do you do after something like that? I know you did a few tours. I know you did the Indies. Like, what does Vito Grasso
I
do?
went back to Japan. I went back to Germany. I went and wrestled for Rikishi in his Fed. And then I did that famous tour of Nepal where I started a riot across the world. And then I went back the next year and I won the heavyweight title. I was invited to the embassy. I have had an illustrious career where I've traveled the world. I've seen everything from the poorest to the richest, the most gracious to the most rudest. But I embraced it all. And nobody could ever say I had a career that wasn't worth doing because anybody out there would want to run my shoes and be able to go to places I did. You guys check us out on YouTube. It's the Big Vito brand. Check us out on Twitter, the Big Vito brand. Facebook, the Big Vito brand. It was a great thing. Check us out on Patreon. It was great to be on your show, Mike. I know, we don't get to hang out too much and we're always talking about having a boys weekend. I definitely want to do that. I miss you and love you to death. You know that we were both at each other's weddings, right, guys?
Yes.
We were both at each
Yeah.
other's weddings, right?
Yeah.
And the greatest rib we pulled on my friend Mike Moraldo was, right, we sent everybody to the other side, to the bride's side of the church, and there I was sitting with my wife and a couple other people, and it was all you heard was crickets, 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 while everybody was talking over there. And then when we went to probably one of the greatest weddings I ever went to, we had the best time. It was something to behold of. And then when he came to my wedding, oh boy, what another great time we had, right? And the parties we used to have. How many, what people don't realize, everybody sees this stuff, right? And they don't realize like how good of friends we were, or how tight people are in wrestling. How many good friends do you have in wrestling? I count them on one hand.
Sure.
How many times when people, right? And I'll say this, guys. Was I the most likable guy in wrestling in the beginning? No. But did people take the time to open the book? These guys took the time to open the book. He said, "We fucking love Vito. He's funny." And I stayed at their homes. I've been when they were children. I've been there with, and did great things. That's the love. And that's people taking the time. And that's real friends. And never having a bad word, a fight, of any arguments. Just watching people act a fool and break your screen door. But, that's a different party.
I might have to edit that part out because I'm kidding. Vito, I miss you. I love you. Thank you so much for taking the time. You had a hell of a career. You are a hell of a man. You're a hell of a man, Vito. I love you, buddy.
Love you too. Thank you, everybody. And check out Mike. Go to his stuff. Give him a like. Give me a like. Peace out. We'll see you soon.